we are on the 6th floor at the Museum of Modern Art in the exhibition Louise Lawler, Why Pictures Now?, which covers the 40-year artistic vision of the American artist Louise Lawler, who came of age in the late 1970s as part of the picture generation, and currently she is one of the most influential women artists, known for her sustained feminist, anti-war, as well as collaborative and relational aspects of her work. Louise Lawler's work is very much involved with taking pictures of other artists' works in private home collections, museums, and bringing a certain lens and institutional critique about how works are being presented, how they are being displayed, what is the context and meaning and use value of artworks once they leave the artist studio. I think that one of the most interesting aspects of her work is the way that she is constantly reframing, restaging, and repositioning her work in the present, moving from photographs to very little works that are paperweights, to tracings, and to works that she calls adjusted to fit, which are works that are being stretched and expanded to fit precisely the wall on which they are being displayed. In 1988, Louise Lawler took a photograph at an auction house, because what I should mention is that in fact Lawler takes her pictures in various contexts, in museums, in auction houses, in storage spaces, and in collectors' homes. Understanding how art, once it leaves the artist studio, is being used, and its meaning changes in function of its use value. This picture was taken in 1988 at Christie's, when a very important art collection, the Tremaine collection, was being auctioned. And one of the most iconic works at that auction was this piece by Andy Warhol, which was the round golden Marilyn, Monroe. In fact, what is interesting with Lawler is how she contextualizes the photograph. And you can see here there is even the original label from the auction house, which even indicates the price for which the piece was being auctioned. The piece is rendered at the exact same size as the original, 17 inches in diameter. But the most interesting aspect of this work is the relationship between titles and images. The work is titled, Does Marilyn Monroe Make You Cry? An absolutely identical piece, which is right across from this one, is titled, Does Andy Warhol Make You Cry? So two images, absolutely identical, with two different titles, provoke different receptions in the viewer. One, obviously, is referring to a very well-known pop artist, a real author. The other one to an iconic dead movie star. So the affective relationship is quite different, although the image is the same. And that is only, the only difference is implied in the title itself. This whole idea of a theory of reception is equally important to Lawler's works, because it understands that art, in fact, depends on the framework on which it is presented, that its meaning changes, morphs, shifts in function of who looks at it and the reaction that you have towards it. This photograph that is called War is Terror. It is one of her most anti-war pieces, but the title obviously plays with the expression or the term War on Terror that was devised by the George W. Bush administration following the September 11, 2001 attacks. Here, Lawler switches that preposition and makes it active. War is terror rather than war on terror, giving it a sense of urgency. This picture was shot actually in the guest room of a private home in France outside of Avignon, where the owners decided to install a photograph of Julia Margaret Cameron's from 1869 of her niece, Julia Jackson. Julia Jackson would eventually have 7 children, including the painter Vanessa Bell and the author Virginia Woolf. Lawler is placing an emphasis on this kind of a matriarchal lineage, pointing on one hand to the strength of Julia Margaret Cameron as the first, one of the earliest women photographers to receive critical acclaim, then the anti-war views of Virginia Woolf. She's basically kind of bringing together both historic and contemporary strains of feminism and pacifism. This is Salon Hodler. It is a photograph that Lawler actually took in Switzerland in a private home of a private collector. And it shows the diptych love by the Swiss artist Ferdinand Hodler at the turn of the 20th century. This exhibition, in fact, relishes on this type of different types of looking, of moving from Salon Hodler being perceived as a regular photograph, a direct viewing experience that you would have of direct rapport, versus this kind of jewel-like paperweight, or rather like a peephole viewing experience, where you have to just lean and look into it. It's a one-to-one relationship, extremely intimate. And here is Salon Hodler rendered just as a tracing on a different scale and emptied out of paper of color. It has a very different feeling to it, more like a drawing of sorts. She collaborated on them together with the artist and illustrator John Buller. They have this very ghostly presence, because all that is being done is the outline of her photographs that is being rendered. They are devoid of any kind of color and look more like coloring books. This idea of continuous representation, of reappropriation of her own work, is absolutely critical to Lawler's work. An image that you find in a photograph can sort of morph into another image as tiny as a paperweight, or as large as an adjusted to fit work, or as ghostly as a tracing.